Welcome to the Plant Grow REIT podcast.
Welcome back to Plant Grow REIT podcast. I'm Andrea, and today I'm joined not in the studio but online with Shaun De Vries, who's founder and director of Open Pantry Consulting. Shaun, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today, even I think you're in sunny Adelaide, is that right?
Yeah, correct. Thanks for having me on, Andrea. It's super sunny Adelaide. Kind of. It's a bit cloudy, but it's a good day.
It looks sunny. Yeah. Look, tell us a little bit about what Open Pantry Consulting is and what sort of focus do you have as a business owner?
So Open Pantry Co or Open Pantry Consulting is a business that I started. We're on 9 years now, which is pretty cool. So I've been in the hospitality industry for just over 25, 26, something like that years. And then Open Pantry Co was a business that I started basically because I lost my job at a bakery group I was running, and I'd had a lot of experience in owning hospitality businesses, running hospitality businesses before, and I had a friend of a friend who was opening up a restaurant and said, "Do you want to help?" And I said, "Sure." That's how Open Pantry Co got born. And essentially, we built the premise on I wanted to share the experience that I had in the industry with others in order to make the industry stronger. So the hospitality industry is notorious for being an industry which is underskilled and underqualified, and therefore people go into investments which are worth $500,000 to many millions of dollars without the necessary tools in order to be successful. And I wanted to change that, both with my knowledge, but also people that I had worked with or built relationships with over the years, and bring them in to work on projects with me and build a really successful consulting business. Hence why I called it Open Pantry Co, because I felt like I had ingredients inside our pantry in order to share with the industry. So we've evolved in many different ways in regards to what we offer, but essentially we work in 3 different streams. We work with startup or pre-revenue hospitality businesses. So a lot of cafes, wine bars, sandwich bars, those kind of things at the moment. Making sure they've got the tools in order to open successfully and be sustainable. Then we work with established businesses. So they may be a bigger organization and they may have a particular challenge, whether that be around supply chain or their training or their systems or their technology. And then we'll come in, provide advice, and then sometimes recommendations, obviously, but sometimes implementation as well, which makes us a bit unique in this space. And then the third stream is recruitment. So you can't grow a hospitality business without people. And a lot of the recruitment, onboarding, training practices within our industry are poor. And I wanted to change that from the start, which is the recruitment piece. And then the long tail of that is we want to add a lot of value to hospitality groups and how they recruit and train themselves in order to make sure we've got a stronger industry again.
Yeah, amazing. It is a tough industry, isn't it? Hospitality, like there's no sugarcoating it. It's really tough.
Yeah, it is. It is tough, but it is the best industry. And I say that obviously biasly, but I think from a connection standpoint with people, from a viability standpoint, they can be very viable businesses that are long lasting and create really good change for both who owns them, obviously, but also the communities that support. And I always think that people should start their first job in hospitality because it trains you on so many things which are important in your everyday life as a person, that allow you to, build up that social toolkit almost in order to have a better life yourself. So
So with a startup, we all know the stats around startup businesses and how, in the first 3 years they're either going to fly or they're going to fail, and there's the data is pretty strong on that, and hospitality is not an outlier. It is exactly like that. So if you don't get the business right at the beginning, in one way or another, it's not going to succeed, no matter how much money you throw at it, because we've seen like really big hospitality groups throw lots of money at things that just have gone wrong. When you get a startup or at the point at which someone says to you, "Hey, Shaun, I'm thinking about opening up a cafe. What are the first sort of 3 things you say to them that you think are actually the key things to what they need to think about and what they may not have thought about?
That's really good question. First question is, what do you want to happen?
Mm-hmm.
So in regards with that, I mean, if you think about 3 years in advance, do you want to just own one venue? Do you want this to be the first of multiple venues? Do you want to franchise this, license this?
Mm-hmm.
Do you just want something that runs 5 days a week from 7 till 1, and you've got enough money that you don't have to work for someone anymore? With that answer, we can therefore work with them to create different types and formats of brands in order to be successful for them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the most important thing.
Yep.
That's probably the second question, actually. The first question I'll ask is, have they worked in hospitality before?
Yep.
We generally don't work with people who haven't worked hospitality before.
Okay.
Whether it be they've been a barista, they've worked as a kitchen hand, they've been a cook or something like that. Basically, because I can't tell you how something is going to be when it goes really bad unless you've experienced it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So because our industry is so underskilled with the business owner level, it just makes to make sure that they actually have an understanding of what it feels like just makes it a hell of a lot easier. It's not like I can go be a banker and start a financial firm if I don't have the skills, but I can go buy a cafe for 500 grand and go and do it, right? So it's very interesting. And probably the third question is like, how do you want to work? How do you want to run this business? And how do you have investors on board? Is it just yourself and your partner? Is it just you? How do you want to structure it? Because the financial structure of the business really dictates to the success as well.
Yep.
We generally have, so the couple of rules we have, we generally don't work with people who haven't worked in hospitality before. Owning businesses for the first time is completely fine. And I also have a 3 investor rule. So if they've got more than 3 investors, then we generally won't work with them.
Okay.
And that's just out of a lot of experience in regards to this. We find that even silent investors are never silent when they're losing money. So if a person who owns a hospitality owns a hospitality venue, I should say, all of a sudden has 5 or 6 voices in their ear every day because their cash flow is low. The investors aren't getting their return on investment as they were promised before the opening. That becomes a real big challenge. And to help someone navigate that through ourselves is just very hard for us to manage ourselves. So I generally don't work in those environments. And I also advise people not to have more than 3.
Yeah. It's an interesting concept, isn't it? Because a lot of hospitality venues need big money in order to be able to be successful, or at least even, I think people probably don't understand the amount of investment that goes into actually just fitting out a cafe or things like that. So when you're talking about having multiple investors, sometimes it's like almost necessary, isn't it? Because you're not going to have enough money out of one family necessarily. It might need to be 2, but it's interesting that you do a cutoff at 3 because the voices just become too loud then.
Yeah, correct. I mean, we work with a client recently who had, and I'm going against my own principle, but had 10, right?
Wow.
10
Okay.
in one venue.
Yeah.
And when we'd sit down with a meeting for him, his phone would just blow up.
Yeah.
And all the time, it's just the investors who are understanding where their money is at with this venue that cost them $500,000.
Yeah.
So it's just tricky, and it takes a lot of energy out of someone. And if you're in an industry which is an office role or more behind the scenes, that's fine, right? You can handle that. But if you're in a customer facing role where you've got to show up for your customers and for your staff every day, that's incredibly hard to do when you've got 10 investors trying to get the money back.
Yeah.
So yes, it's a bit of a different one, but it is an important one.
Yeah, exactly. So for instance, someone is a barista and they're working in their local cafe and they think to themselves, this is something that I really want to do with my life. I want to, build my own cafe or my own, wine bar or whatever it happens to be. If they reach out to you and they say, these are some thoughts that I've had, Shaun, is there a process that you take them through? Like, is there some sort of formal, let's, sit down and fill out some questionnaires about who you are and what your motivations are? Is it a formal thing, or is it more ad hoc, off the cuff sort of stuff?
Oh, there's probably a bit of light and shade to it. Hospitality is always black and white and always a bit grey, right? So
yeah.
The black and white stuff around financials and location and all those different things, we've got an 8-ingredient formula which we work towards, which we know we need to think about those 8 different ingredients in order to make that hospitality venue successful. So we'll run through that with them. And it's just a general discovery call. So we understand about them, we understand why they want to do a business like this, what their expectations are of us as a consultancy group, because we want people that are going to refer us business. We want people who we're going to work with again on their 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th business. And we want positive relationships, right? Like we're people. So if we have negative experiences with our clients, that's never a good thing. So having that discovery call to really get the litmus test if we would work well together is really, really important for us. I often think the first 10 minutes will dictate if that person becomes a client and if we'll become a brand that we'll work with as well. So, but if they're a barista who's, worked in one venue, for example, and done a really great job, we usually say to them, maybe go work in a couple of other venues, because then you'll learn more and understand more. If you just work with one brand in your early 20s or whatnot, then you've only learned so much. So to understand different ways that different owners treat their staff, manage their people, run a venue successfully, is really important to understand that knowledge. Obviously, I did own a business at 21, so I'm speaking from experience of what I probably should have done in hindsight.
What is the most joyous thing that you get out of this sort of process? So say someone comes to you and this is their first foray. They've worked in, 3 or 4 businesses. They know what the go is. They've been doing it for 3 years or something like that. And they come to you and they say, Shaun, I'm ready. I want to jump in. What is in it for you? Like, other than obviously you get paid to do consulting and that, is part of it. You've got to live and be able to enjoy your own life. What part of it do you love most about that sort of stuff?
I think being a true hospitalitarian, I think seeing someone happy and seeing someone content. So I think there's a difference between happy and content, right? Happy is going through the motions of having a venue open, that relief of it actually opening successfully and things working, whether it be pouring beers, making coffee, serving great plates of food. That's the happiness. The content part is when it starts to work. And when those ingredients come into play, those systems are working well, and they know they can build a sustainable business. So I think having a client who is content with where the business is at, the work that we've done, is really important. And also probably just the fact that through developing an owner or a venue manager, they're developing more talent themselves. So going back to what I said at the start of our conversation, I believe that hospitality is the best industry to be a part of at some way, shape or time in your career. It just gives you so much if you just give it a bit more. Knowing that we're going to create positive change by helping people deliver positive venues is a really important thing for me. Because I think the skills you learn out of hospitality can just enrich your life. And I think us having a little bit to play in that is really, really important. And hence why I started doing the consultancy, because I thought I could create more change rather than working in an amazing company and working with maybe, 500 people. That's a bit different. I want to create change for thousands.
You mentioned sustainability, and it is something that is obviously at the heart of every hospitality business, whether it be financial sustainability, the ability to, the cost effectiveness of running a business, waste, all of those sorts of things are things that probably, as someone who walks into a cafe and just orders a large latte every day, I'm not necessarily thinking about all of the things that go in behind giving me that large latte. And we, the media are quick to say, oh, it's $7.50 for a latte, and that's outrageous, and these sorts of things are not sustainable, and how can people, afford these things in a cost of living crisis? When you're having conversations with hospitality owners about their pricing and about their location, because obviously location is a thing, are there keys of information that you talk to them about to create those pricing models, working out what is sustainable for them as well as sustainable for the market that they're in?
Yeah, I think coffee's an interesting one. We don't generally work with a whole heap of cafes because the revenue inside cafes and then to use a consultant is a bit tricky sometimes.
Yeah.
But notoriously, I do a lot of pro bono work with cafes and have a lot of.
Gee, I wonder why that might be.
It's just a tricky and important part of the industry. So there's three parts of the industry which I love the most: bakeries, because that's where I started.
Yep.
Cafes and pubs. The reason why I love those three the most is they're the ones that you go to the most.
Yeah.
So therefore, you always have either a good or a bad experience. There's always an opportunity to do things better. But to answer your question regarding pricing, hospitality media is a really tricky one. They love to jump on a clickbait. Your coffee's going to be $12 in 2026.
Yeah.
And it well might be if you're getting a specialty coffee that's totally sustainable from an area in Colombia that you can't get anywhere else. But to think about the costs involved in especially something like coffee is quite dynamic. So we look at what their product mix is or what they think their product mix is going to be.
Yep.
So for example, I've got two cafes that are very different around me that charge slightly different less for their coffee pricing. I would say their coffees are on par, pretty much the same kind of quality. I can always determine that they're going to be pretty consistent. The one that's a bit more expensive is one that's on a street front, is probably 90% coffee sales.
Yep.
Doesn't do any food, other than a couple of different things which they would buy in, like cookies or muffins, those kind of different things. So because their mix on coffee is proportionally higher, they would need to charge more, generally speaking, for their coffee, because it is more expensive to make a coffee than it is to push out a lot of different styles of food.
Yep.
There's so many variables here, but so many different styles of food, right? So, but the cafe that's a bit cheaper on coffee still does a really good coffee volume, but they also have people who will increase their average sale because they're buying plates of food as well as doing takeaway. So therefore, as part of their mix, their coffee revenue is slightly less. So therefore, they can charge slightly less as well. So it is a bit tricky. But when you think about supply chain, when you think about how many people are involved in that transaction of coffee or milk or coffee cups, there's a lot of different things which come into play in order for us to therefore say what your coffee price should be in order to be sustainable. Throw in 7 different load awardings, loads. 7 different loadings across people award rate. Makes it a very complex mix.
I think, we use that as a segue into the recruitment side of things and the people of people. Because as you said, hospitality is a people business, and it's about people running it as well as people pleasing, because the customer is the reason why you're going to be successful or not. If you're a good business, then you'll get good customers and good repeat business. Because it's, the industry is notorious for again, the media jumping on, people being underpaid, people being treated badly. It does not have a good people reputation in terms of the people working in it, does it? And, the celebrity element behind it as well, where we've seen inside kitchens when, they make documentaries about the hospitality business and how rough it is in those kitchens and all of that sort of stuff. It's obviously not like that in all businesses because some of them have really good cultures, and that's the same across the board. It's just that it's not as exciting to come into, for instance, an accounting firm and look at whether people get treated well or not. Like that's not exciting. Nobody's going to make a documentary about that. How do you have conversations with the businesses that you consult with about the importance of their people and the culture behind the scenes?
Fantastic questions today. We look at their ambitions and how they want to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Then we'll look at basically their organizational stack, their people stack.
Yep.
And think about what kind of people they want in their business moving forward. So we always start with the big picture in mind in order to work our way back to what's important. In regards with recruitment and onboarding and training, like there's so many different steps in regards to making that successful. The more complicated a venue, the more complicated that pathway is going to be. If you're running the cafe down the road from me, it's a bit more simple. It's just about coffee training. So really, if we're recruiting for them or if I'm training them how to recruit properly, it's about thinking of every single step of why they want to recruit and how they do it. So is that a person we actually need in our business right now? Quite often when people say, Shaun, I need you to hire a sous chef, or Shaun, I need you to hire a venue manager, an operations manager to look after my 3 venues. Quite often I'll lose a fee because we can work out another way that they don't actually have to recruit anyone. They just change the roles and descriptions of people within the business already. So think about that person and why they want to hire them, a job description that supports that job before they go to market, a job ad that's not vanilla as hell, that actually talks about their brand, talks about potentially them as founders, why they wanted to start the brand, because especially hospitality people buy in on stories. Therefore, having engagement with an owner or a manager about why they're working in that brand is incredibly important to someone's longevity in that brand as an employee. How they recruit them. So we say no more than 3 interviews. Why do you need more than 3 to make a decision about a full-time barista? Ideally 2. So if we go to market, we will do the first interview and then we would say no more than 2 with the client. Reference checking if they would like to. It's pretty easy for 2 to 3 people to come to me and say, oh, this person's really, really good. So going on your gut feel on that person that you've been interviewing is much more important than any kind of reference check. A lot of venues will do trials. We only work with venues that do paid trials. Underneath some awards in Australia, you can do a 2-hour unpaid trial, which I think is a really great way to annoy people. I think if someone is spending time in your business, it's no different than if you went for an executive role and you did a proposal or you did 5 interviews. Like, why businesses don't pay talented people who they say no to for their time in that structure is beyond me, and I would love to do that in hospitality. And then obviously how they onboard them. So they've said yes. How do they say no to the people properly who they don't want to hire? But once that person is hired, like that's when the rubber hits the road. How do we think about onboarding, orientation, which are 2 different things, and then how do we train that person? So whether it be around coffee, whether it be around chef skills or running a venue, never take for granted the fact that they've worked at a high caliber venue or a place that you've always liked to eat or drink. That doesn't mean they're trained to your set of skills and your nuances in your venue. Never leave someone to their own devices, because otherwise they'll build their own devices, which you probably won't like. So, that's probably what I'd say. Sorry, the really long-winded answer.
Yeah.
No, that's okay. Because it's really important. I did read something the other day, and it's a thing, we focus on heavily here as well in our own business, is that, recruitment is part of a process, and then the onboarding and how you manage that going forward is actually really important. And a lot of businesses don't get that right. And I didn't, you kind of take for granted that businesses understand that they have to onboard a new team member in a certain way. But I think we've missed the mark, because you don't know what you don't know. And I had an experience in professional services a couple of months ago where I read a Facebook post. There's a group online that on Facebook. And the Facebook post said something along the lines of, I've got a new team member starting tomorrow. Has anybody got any ideas about what I should do for onboarding? And the comments in that post were, to me, I sent them that post to my governance manager and my P&C advisor in our team. And I just said, I'm sorry, but I didn't understand that we were in an industry that was just actually in such a kerfuffle about that sort of stuff, that we're saying, you've got to show them where the toilets are and the coffee machine is. Like, they're the two key things that were pretty much just as long as they know where to find the coffee and where to do this, and that's the most important stuff. I'm like, we've got a 3-week onboarding process at Aintree Group. So if you come into our team, 3 weeks it'll take you to just work out, the pretty well basics, not even how to chop vegetables, but literally just how to find stuff and how to log into things and whatever. And it still astounds me that there's professional businesses, so office-based businesses, that don't understand the importance of onboarding and how it makes or breaks a team member. I can't even imagine a hospitality business that would let somebody come in and just be like, the sink's over there, and, you'll find some stuff in the fridge, and that's it. Because there's just so much at stake, right? Like, we're not talking about whether someone can use the photocopier. We're talking about whether there's food handling is correct, whether we're safe with implements, whether we don't burn ourselves. Like, there's actually physical things that can happen in a hospitality business if you don't get that onboarding right.
And they do every single day. I remember working with a consultant a couple of years ago who brought me into this project, and he said, Shaun, the most important thing that you'll learn every day is, like, don't kill anyone today, right? whether it be your staff slipping on a floor, right?
Yeah.
And I talked with I was talking with a chef last week who slipped on a floor and was off for 6 months.
Yeah, crazy.
Or obviously food handling, right? Like, when you're dealing with such problem items, whether they be something like chicken or eggs, which are obviously, highly susceptible to salmonella and things like that.
Yeah.
Or you're talking nut allergies. Like, I've worked in bakeries for 10 years. Like, try to tell someone who has a nut allergy that it's okay to have a scroll from a bakery that also has walnuts in it. It's very, very hard. Like, we had to think about those different things. So I was lucky to work for, one of the biggest burger groups for a good 5 or 6 years. And when where it changed in the fact that we were turning over a lot of staff, where that change was when we implemented a statewide Saturday induction that was for 3 hours for every single staff member who was recruited that week. And they weren't able to start in the restaurants until they did that induction and learnt about brand and learnt about safety and learnt about their role and what their accountability is to the brand, but also what the accountability was to us as employers. And that just slowed staff turnover so much, because you can solve so many problems that someone's not going to ask you in an interview. Do you have any more other questions in that interview process? When they're actually recruited. So orientation is, like, so much more important than recruitment.
Yeah. Do you have, when you're working with businesses, because obviously you've said, there's some small businesses and some larger, is it the same philosophy for all of them with that? Do you say to even the smaller businesses, you still have to follow these processes? You can't, just because it's 2 of you in the kitchen doesn't mean that these things are any less important. We've still got to cover all of these bases.
Yeah, 100%, because you're always building for growth, right? So if you're only building for growth within that particular venue itself and you'll never do a second venue, that's completely fine. But, big venues always started with one. So, like, how do we get the framework right from the first venue if we can? We've got a 3-venue principle that you need to get it right by the 3rd venue, otherwise you'll never grow. Because you're always working the first one a lot. You'll work in the second one just that little bit less, but once you get to the 3rd one, you can only stretch yourself so thin. So unless you've got systems, processes, and the right talent in place, you're never going to grow past 3 without those things in place. So, same systems, no matter what business.
Yep. What are the most important ones? Like, if you were to say, here's our standard operating procedures, what are like the 3 most important standard operating procedures that all hospitality venues should have, something in place for? Obviously, food handling is pretty important.
Obviously, food handling is incredibly important.
Yep.
Anything around health and safety in regards with staff on shift, and making sure that, slips and falls and cuts and bruises, like how do we treat those in venue? Making sure you've got staff on shift who have first aid training across the board. Very much like we have to have responsible service of alcohol or responsible service of gaming in certain venues. So the 3rd one I would say would be anything around sexual harassment. It has been a part of the industry which has been very good at turning off the light and not talking about. You can see that now changing with big hospitality groups. The chickens are coming home to roost in regards with a lot of bad policies and culture and things that are happening with inside certain venues and certain groups. So making sure that you're talking about that straight away from a recruitment and training standpoint is incredibly important to the longevity of someone with inside your business. Obviously delivering on that too, but talking about it as a first step. Because if we don't have a safe industry to work in, and we have the diversity of people who work in our industry, then it's going to become very, very hard to get qualified people or semi-qualified people, and therefore we have a weaker industry as a result. So unless it's safe, then our industry will fall over.
I know that there's businesses that you work with, and it's obviously something you're really passionate about. How do you get that message out to businesses who can't necessarily access your services? Because, obviously not everyone is in a position to be able to pay a consultant to come in. How do you get that message? Do you, you've obviously got blogs and LinkedIn posts and things like that, but it's a pretty wide net, isn't it, for hospitality? Like, every country town has a cafe and a bakery and a pub. How do you get into those? They're the 3. They're definitely the 3. You're absolutely right. Like, everyone knows those. But how do you spread that message wide?
I think about how I can spread it wide, but also who I'm motivating in order to also spread that message wide in their own way as well, right? So I had a podcast for many years, which I used to host, that I come out of last year, and we had 250 odd episodes, which I'd hosted, talking to people in the industry about their roles. That was really about people who would be listening to get that learned experience from someone they had met, and taking that and working that in their venue. We've just started up a couple of new podcasts, which have just released. One that's a under 10-minute podcast, which releases every Monday, called the Prep List. And that just gives people hints and tips that they can quickly take and implement. And then a new probably format like this, where it's an interview style called The Ingredients, which I'll interview people in the industry about their roles, and also people that support the industry as well. So people come from marketing or sales or different tech. So those are 2 ways. We've got a newsletter which goes out every fortnight, which gives people good advice, I hope. And I'm really lucky to have a really strong LinkedIn profile now. That's something which I've built up over years. And that gives me good access to people all around Australia, but also internationally, to both give my learnings to, but also get learnings from. So that's been a really good thing. Sometimes I host some panel events or things like that. I'll be at Fine Food again in Sydney this year, which is pretty exciting to host some different things. So it's a multitude of different ways. But I think people just reaching out to me, whether it be through LinkedIn or email, or they get my number somehow or something, I'll always answer everyone who comes to me. And if it results in a client, that's great. If it doesn't, that's great. The most important thing is that we have a strong industry, and I will be tireless in my effort to make the industry better before I leave it.
Yeah. How do you think it's going? How do you think the industry has changed? Is it getting better fast enough as far as you're concerned, or are there areas that you think still need to be, pushed along, however they can be pushed along?
I don't think it'll ever be fast enough. I think I've become content in the fact that I always know there'll be something that annoys me. So that's fine, whether that be a rogue operator who's not paying people correctly, or a sexual harassment claim that's been festering for years, or something like that. I think as a country, I think we're better than a lot of other countries in regards with food safety laws, like how we serve alcohol. I think from a customer's perspective, you have a very, very safe, consistent industry. What we need to do better at as an industry is taking care of ourselves. So making sure that we're paying people appropriately from the start. We're not working them a 70-hour week when it's 38. We're not putting people in corners where they feel like they can't get out of. We, as I said before, we have a diversity of talent who works in our industry, and I do use the word talent deliberately. Everyone who comes in our industry has the opportunity to be even more talented than when they came in. But we do have a diversity. We have people from many different backgrounds, people where English is a second language, people where sexual orientation is completely different. But the challenge is, and what I am trying to do over the long tail of my career, is have diversity in leadership. So if I leave the industry and 70 to 80% of the leaders in our industry, whether they be venue managers, operations managers, CEOs, COOs, look like me, that is a problem. With a diversity in talent who are actually creating leadership change will mean that we have a safer industry. So part of the reason we don't have a safer industry is the fact that leadership hasn't changed very much. And that is somewhat a generational thing, because the wealth is at the top, and therefore that's hard to shake. But the great thing about hospitality is it can change from the ground up with independent venues, single operator venues, creating change and creating movements. And we've seen that over the last 24 months with different things coming out which are bad. It's when those things come out, then the good things can happen and we can create change. So I think to answer your question, I think it's better in a lot of ways than when I started. And it's definitely a lot safer than when I started, I believe, on a whole. But we need to do a lot more in how we recruit and train our teams, because I think that's probably got worse.
Okay. Is that do you think a pressure based on the general feeling in the community and society, cost pressures, and, are there going to be customers next week, or there's pressure from the new venue down the road because it's got more social media influencers and that sort of stuff? Is that just because there's, the changing nature of how we market and how we find out about venues, it puts an additional pressure, and people are ignoring that side of things a bit, because, you've got to employ an influencer, and they're more important than, whether I've recruited my team well. There's obviously so much that is external to the actual venue itself.
I think the fact that house prices are where they are, I think everything flows from high house prices. So the fact you've got high house prices that are not relative to what someone is earning now to what would have happened in the 80s therefore means there's a lot more pressure on people's discretionary spend, which is where people go out and spend in hospitality because they feel confident, right? They want to celebrate, they want to have a great experience. So I think customers still shop hospitality a lot. They just shop it it depends on the venue. They will shop probably less now than they did 24 months ago. But they're shopping it more than what they did 20 years ago, right? So hospitality venues have probably come back to being more celebrationary, which is a really good thing. It's just a matter of like how much money people are going to spend when they actually get there to how sustainable that venue can be. Venues are really hard to make money out of. Really hard. So that's where you need to think about so many different elements in order to make them successful. I think we do have a leveling out of those cost pressures from a supply chain perspective as inflation begins to come under control. But there's certain things that we don't grow in our country that are going to mean that things continue to increase. So coffee being one of those. That's probably the major thing. So I think the competition amongst especially the cafe sector, like you can see the sandwich sector in Melbourne is
it's going crazy.
Everyone's making a sandwich right now, right? Which is great because I love sandwiches.
They're paninis. They're not sandwiches.
No.
You got to get the marketing right, Shaun.
Exactly. If it's not a focaccia, it's not a sandwich. Or bakeries, like the fact that people spend 2 hours in a line on a Saturday to go spend $30 on pastries or a new cake. Far out. I wish that happened when I owned bakeries in the early 2000s.
There's one in Melbourne that people do go crazy over, and I have driven there and driven away because I'm not standing in line for that. I get that they're great and I see them on social media and they look amazing, but I'm not the sort of person who's lining up in a queue to get my Saturday morning pastries, but I'm probably not the right target market for that anyway. So we could talk about all of this 1,000 times, Shaun, and I think the point is that as a consumer, we often think that hospitality should be simple and easy, like, it's not that hard to run a cafe. I've spoken to so many people over the years who would say to me, you're a really good cook, Andrea, you should open a cafe. And, I'm smart enough to know that it's not, I might be a good cook, but I'm not. It's not the same at all. And you and I could talk about this a lot, and no doubt over the time we will talk about it more because there's some really important things that we can still cover. And like you said, getting the word out to people in the industry that there's support and that there's ways that they can make positive change, I think is really important. We will share all of your details as part of this episode, so people will be able to access your podcast, your website, and your newsletter. We'll make sure that we share all of that so that they can log on. So people, because it's really important to get the word out there that there's people out there who can support in whichever way is right. So thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Plant, Grow, Reap. We'll talk to you again because, as I said, I've probably got another 1,000 questions that I could ask you, so we could keep going. But today we'll finish up here and share all of your details. So thanks so much for joining us today, Shaun. Appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks, Andrea. Appreciate it.
Thank you.